Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Knighton Runs Podcast. And in this episode, I'm going to be following up on my previous show where I was talking about the paces that you need to be training at when preparing for a marathon. And on today's episode, I'm going to go deeper specifically into how fast you should be running as kind of your everyday pace. And now this is the one thing that most athletes get wrong. It's the number one thing that I have to correct, and it is simply running far too fast on everyday runs. Easy days, warm-ups, cool downs, recovery runs. Athletes tend to think that running faster is going to make them faster, and that is not a nuanced enough answer. You need to run fast when it counts and run slow when you need to run slow to build the full picture of the athlete who you want to be and become your fastest actually on race day. So today I'm going to get into specifically how fast you should be running. I'll let you know for whatever given marathon goal time you are targeting, how fast you should run. I'll teach you some of my own mistakes in this. And this is really going to help. No one ever said, I wish I ran faster on easy days, but I always see people improve tremendously when they slow their easy days down and focus on the more important aspects of their running. So before I get into it, I just want to remind you, if you haven't downloaded a free copy of my book, Run Faster Marathons, The Proven Path to PR, it's my marathon training guide. And I have a free preview edition of that book. Contains about half of the content in the full copy. You can get it by going to my website right now at knightonruns.com or go to knightonruns.com/book. I'll have a link in the show notes to it, and I'll send you that copy today. The book's going to help you run faster and with more confidence than ever before. And it's a great way to get started. All right, so let's get into it. Marathon pace versus everyday pace. They're not the same thing if you have the aspirations to run a fast marathon. If you're just trying to finish a marathon, sure, you go out there and you jog the whole thing and you try to survive, you try to run the full distance. That's one thing, but that's not what I'm talking about here. Here, I'm talking about people who are training like an athlete to run their fastest on race day. If you want to run your fastest on race day, you need to train the vast majority of your miles significantly slower than marathon race pace. And this is going to be the case regardless of your ability as an athlete, whether you're in the front of the pack, mid pack, or closer to the back. The majority of your running should be well slower than marathon race pace. And let's get into specifically what that should look like. I'm just going to do a little screen share of a new chart that I created. Think will be helpful. If you're only listening to the podcast version of this, you can check the link in the show notes to see this on YouTube and view the chart. All right. So here we have the marathon pace and intensity chart for marathon pace versus everyday pace. Now, you'll see basically, I have goal finish times listed from 2:30 in the marathon, which is super fast, kind of a sub-elite time, to 3 hours male BQ time for the fastest of us in our 30s, 3:30 female BQ time for those of us in our early 30s, working all the way up to 4 hours to 4:45. Any slower than about a 4:45 marathon, you're most likely just trying to finish it and you're not so concerned about speed. So that's kind of off the chart here. But for the most part, what I'm going to talk about here today still applies. And on the chart, you can see that the fastest times are in red, and then I have a gradient where it actually kind of cools down as it gets slower and slower and slower. This is not to say that people who run a 2:30 marathon are in any way better or running faster than people who are running 3:30 or 4 or 4:45. What this indicates is the faster your overall marathon finish time is, the harder of a relative intensity that marathon pace is. So if you can picture someone who's running 26 miles in 2 hours and 30 minutes is going to be needing to work a lot harder to cover that distance than someone who is going to be running the marathon in, let's say, 4 hours and 30 minutes. For them, it's still going to be a hard endurance effort, but the relative intensity is going to be much lower because they're going to be running that pace for 2 hours more. If you can imagine, me or you or your friend, like if we're working really, really hard for 10 minutes, we can probably only work so hard at that. But then if you say, you need to work that hard for like 30 minutes or an hour and cover the same distance, the person who's doing it in a shorter amount of time, they're relatively working harder. What your fitness allows you to do is unlock basically an ability to work harder, to put out more power, to process more oxygen, to run more forcefully down the road. So though it takes less time, relatively the perceived effort is a bit harder. Marathon pace, when you are actually running it on race day, is probably only going to feel around like a 6 out of 10. During training, it may feel a lot harder than that, especially if it's a hot or humid day, or maybe you're at altitude. But on race day, under good conditions, marathon pace should feel like a 6 out of 10. For the fastest athletes, maybe it's going to feel a little harder, like a 7 out of 10. For athletes more towards the back of the pack, like 4 hour plus marathon, that could be lower intensity. Maybe it's like a 5 or a 4 out of 10. But the topic that I really want to hold on to today is marathon pace versus everyday pace, because this is the biggest mistake that most athletes make. It's the number one thing that I need to fix when I start working with athletes one-on-one, is to get them to slow down on their easy days so that they distribute their effort evenly throughout the course of the week and put the emphasis on the important workouts and the important long runs, and they de-emphasize the recovery runs and truly allow them to be recovery or a warm-up or a cool down, which is a preparation to run hard, and that they're not sacrificing the most important workouts and long runs by going too hard on their easy days. So I remember when I was trying to break 3 in the marathon. So a 3-hour marathon is about a 6:50 per mile pace. Now, everyday pace, the pace you should be going on your easy days, warm-ups, cool downs, and recovery runs, if you're training to run 6:50 in the marathon, your everyday pace should be at least a minute per mile slower than that. I'm talking about 7:50 to 8:40 per mile. I remember when I was training for my first marathon, my coach would tell me, never do an easy run faster than 8 minutes. Actually, target like 8:30. Everyday pace, easy pace, this is going to be a spectrum. It's going to vary depending on how good you feel on the day, whether you're emphasizing recovery versus just getting kind of a good quality mileage building easy run in there. But generally you'll have about a minute per mile range where, it's going to feel comfortable for you. Maybe it's going to be like a 2 out of 10 super recovery day. You have a hard workout coming up the next day or a long run, and you're really just trying to cover the miles as easy as possible. You might be slower on that side of the range, maybe 2 minutes per mile slower than goal marathon pace. But when you're feeling good, you might be a little faster on that spectrum. You might be as close as like a minute per mile slower than marathon pace. But very rarely, at least if you're trying to run, let's say, a sub 4-hour marathon, do you ever want to do your everyday pace within 1 minute of your goal marathon pace? So again, this is the number one mistake that athletes make. Polarized training, 80-20 training, you may have heard these terms. This is a great approach to running. And if you're not doing this already, it's a great place to start. Most athletes do not put enough variety into their training, and instead they just kind of run moderately hard all the time. This is definitely a problem because it's going to make you stagnate in your growth and performance. You're not going to be able to handle as many miles per week, so you're not going to be able to improve, and you're not going to be tapping into the important workout paces that you need to be hitting to actually run your best and make, marathon pace feel as comfortable as possible. You don't get good at a marathon by going out and just, hammering marathon pace miles and saying, hey, I'm going to do 10 this weekend and 11 next weekend and 12 the weekend after that and 13, 14. I'm just going to build that up. And same thing, midweek, you don't just say, oh, I'm going to go out and run 6 miles at marathon pace. And then tomorrow I'll do another 6. And then I'll do like 8 on Thursday. That is not how it works. But if you are consistently running significantly slower on your easy days, 1 to 2 minutes per mile slower on your easy days than your goal marathon pace, and you're running sufficient volume, sufficient miles per week, and you're bringing in specific race-focused workouts that are phased over time to get you to develop the aspects of your fitness and your confidence that you need to run your best on race day, the full picture will come together and you will be able to run your goal marathon pace at your marathon. Let's say you're training for a 3:30 marathon. I help a lot of folks in that pace range who are trying to get a BQ, whether men or women. This is about an 8-minute per mile pace. And this athlete should be doing their everyday runs, their easy runs, warm-ups, cool downs, recovery runs. Their marathon pace is 8 minutes for a 3:30 per mile, 3:30 marathon. But their everyday pace should be 9 to 10 minutes per mile. So 1 to 2 minutes slower. In the world of Strava and social media, people share their posts and their runs, and people get competitive on easy days. It's really stupid. There's nothing wrong with running the pace that's appropriate for you on your easy days. I almost feel like some people are afraid to run like a 9-minute mile or a 10-minute mile or an 11-minute mile. You got to get over that if you want to be the best runner that you can be. You need to run the pace that's appropriate for you. You can't force a faster pace on an easy day because that's going to sabotage your workouts, your long runs, and your overall development as an athlete. You got to get the balance right between hard work and recovery. And when you run too fast on your everyday easy runs, warm-ups, cool downs, recovery runs, you sabotage the rest of your training. So if you're training for a 3:30 marathon, 9 to 10 minutes per mile, don't go faster than 9 minutes on an easy day. If you're training for a 3:45 marathon, that's 8:33 per mile, but 9:40 to 10:40 is about where your easy runs should be. And then as we get into the 4 to 5 hour marathon range, your runs should be in like the 10 to 12 minute per mile pace range. 4-hour marathon is 9:05 per mile in the marathon, but the vast majority of your runs, again, should be at 10 to 11 minutes per mile. So if you can take anything from this chart and from this conversation today, it's you need to know what you're trying to achieve when you do your everyday runs. The goal of an easy run is to build your mileage. It's to bridge the gap between the harder workouts. During the base phase of training, it gets you ready to do the harder workouts. It prepares your body physically. Warm-ups prepare you to run fast. Cool downs ease you off of hard running. And recovery runs explicitly serve the purpose of covering this distance as easy as possible so that you can run your next workout or long run to the best of your fitness level. Don't sabotage your training by going too fast on these everyday runs. Save your best effort for when it matters, for workouts, for long runs, and for races. And if you do that consistently for weeks and months and seasons on end, you're going to continue to improve and improve for a long, long time. You have a huge amount of potential in running and a long way to go. And this is the best way to achieve that potential. So if you're just listening to the podcast, you can see the chart and see more details, specifically how fast you should be running by looking at the YouTube video. Link is in the description below. But a general rule of thumb is take your marathon pace, goal marathon pace per mile, add 1 to 2 minutes to that. And that's kind of the range you should be for the vast majority of most of your runs. When you do these runs, you're building a huge base, and it's going to allow you to reach a peak level of fitness where you can really do something huge on race day. You don't need to be proving that you can run marathon pace each and every day you're out there running. Fix that one little thing with your running if you're doing it wrong, and trust me, you're going to become much, much faster athlete thanks to it. No one, you can't really do your easy runs too slow, but you can definitely do them too fast. And I just know so many people who, once they slow down their easy runs, have seen tremendous, tremendous improvement. So I hope this was helpful. This has been Coach Chris Knighton. If you want to connect with me to learn about one-on-one coaching opportunities or get the complete marathon training program that I developed, it's going to help you run faster and more confidently than ever before, you can go to KnightonRuns.com. I also am doing one-on-one coaching consultations now. So if you ever just want to chat about your own specific circumstances and make a plan to move forward, you can check out my website too for that. And if you haven't already, be sure to get a copy of my marathon training guide. I have a free preview edition of my book, Run Faster Marathons, The Proven Path to PR, on my website, KnightonRuns.com/book, or just click the link that's in the show notes. And yeah, I think it's really going to help you a lot and get you on the right track. All right, folks, till next time, hope your running's going well, and we'll talk soon. Bye.